Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. I feel like most of us are buzzing for the new technical regulations next year, right? It can't only be me. We should be getting a much closer grid where the cars are all a lot closer in performance. The budget cap came in this year, which means there should be a smaller gap between the bottom teams and the top ones. Fingers crossed, more competitive running is what we want. But that doesn't mean there won't be teams who rise to the top, because especially in the first few years, I feel like you're going to get some teams who adapt really well to the regulations, some not so much. Long term, it will be closer, but I do think that in 2022, the cream will rise to the top, but I don't necessarily think it will be Mercedes and Red Bull, which, you know, they are the two most recent teams to fully dominate the sport for any given period of time, right? You would expect they're going to get to the top because they're the ones who are doing the best at the minute, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. So when I ponder this question, who's going to be ahead of everyone else next year? Not necessarily by loads, but top of the tree, right? To me, I feel like it's going to be Ferrari. I've got my reasonings, and that's the point of today's video, to talk about why I think Ferrari are going to be the cream of the crop in 2022. But as always, let me know down in the comments below whether you agree with me or who you think is going to adapt best to the new regulations. And while you're on the way down, give the like button one of them and double check you subscribe to the channel, because you might think you are, but you might not be. So just double check. I feel like most people in this day and age could benefit from having their very own website, right? Whether you're a professional who wants to showcase your work, whether you just want to write a blog, whether you want to set up an online retailer, online store, it's so easy these days. And the platform I choose to use to bring my website to life is Squarespace. Thousands of drag and drop templates available to make whatever website you want. It's so easy, even this mug can do it. Trust me, if I can manage it, you definitely can. If you're interested, head to squarespace.com, have a look around. You can test it out, you can try a lot of the tools, most of the tools available free of charge. It's only when you want to put the website live to the world that you have to pay anything. And when that time comes, use the code TOMMOF1 or give the link in the top line of the description a tap for 10% off your first website or domain. Scuderia Ferrari have competed in every single season of Formula One since the sport's inception in 1950. 16 Constructors championships have been won by Ferrari. Ascari, Fangio, Hawthorne, Hill, Surtees, Lauda, Scheckter, Schumacher and Raikkonen. 15 drivers' championships in total. 1,025 total race starts as well. The prancing horse is synonymous with Formula One, and they've enjoyed plenty of success in their 71 years. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, Ferrari were on top, I'm sure, for a lot of you as well. You know, he brought their first driver's title in 21 years since Jody Scheckter before him dominated 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004. 5 titles on the bounce. Could have had another one if he didn't break his leg in 1999. And might have even had more if that plucky little Spaniard Fernando Alonso didn't come along in that Renault. Nevertheless, the past decade or so has been, broadly speaking, pretty unsuccessful by Ferrari standards. Their last Constructors title came in 2008 and their last drivers courtesy of Kimi Raikkonen in 2007. Did Ferrari have a car and driver combination to challenge in 2017? I think they did. First 6 races of the season, Sebastian Vettel won 3 and P2'd in 3. But unfortunately, they were unable to maintain that consistency throughout the season. Seb only took 2 more victories that year, finishing 46 points behind eventual title winner Lewis Hamilton. And as for 2018, they definitely had a shot, right? 13 races in, Seb had won 5 races, was only 17 points behind Lewis Hamilton at the time. But this was the one that really got away. In the last 8 races, Lewis won 6, Seb didn't win any. By the end of the season, it was 88-point gap, so it wasn't even that close by the end of it, even though it was looking so good by the mid-season stage. Point is, the Scuderia haven't won for a while now, but that will change. It is only a matter of time. Scuderia Ferrari is far too big of an institution. It's practically a religion in Italy. I'm sure a lot of you watching are diehard Ferrari fans. I don't feel that any other team in all of motorsport gets the level of passion and support that Ferrari does. And it's that determination that, yes, you could argue that, oh, well, why wasn't that enough in the past? No, but I think the level of expectation, the level of pressure, which isn't always a good thing, but I think there's enough want and desire because they thought Sebastian was going to be the man to bring them titles. It just didn't materialise. And going into 2022, they're really going to want it. Now look, there's 10 teams on the grid and they're all going to be managing their transition from 2021 into 2022, right? We know, for example, Haas have completely written it off because, I think the smaller teams are sniffing an opportunity here. You look at what happened with Brawn in 2009. I mean, that Honda team almost went into liquidation when Ross Brawn brought it out. Within 12 months, they were world title winners. And ultimately, given the budget cap, the more time you're putting into this season's car has to mean the less you're putting into next year's, right? Pre-budget cap days, it didn't matter. A big team like Ferrari could just throw money at both and it's calm, but you can't do that anymore, which makes what Force India achieved just even more impressive to me. We've got the $145 million cap in place now, which certainly isn't pocket change, don't get me wrong, but when you think pre-budget cap days, the top teams, so Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, were spending about $400 million a year, so over twice what the budget cap is now. That is significant. But even though the budget cap is now in place, the cash-rich teams still hold a bit of advantage because they got an early start, because 2019 US Grand Prix was when the new regulations were officially announced. Obviously, the idea was it to be 2021. It got pushed back to 2022. But the teams will have been aware of this well ahead of time. And again, for 2019, there wasn't a budget cap. So they could throw money, getting a head start over the smaller teams, which obviously they can't throw money like that. Yes, 2020 shut down everyone at the start, but ultimately it has to be acknowledged that 2019, a big team like Ferrari would have got a head start, and no team is more cash rich than Ferrari. They are number one. As early as April this year, Ferrari was saying that 90% of their resource was going towards the 2022 car. And with their lowly P6 finish in 2020, this gave them 12.5% more CFD aero development time this year than Mercedes. That is the sliding scale budget cap for you. The lower you finish in the Constructors, the more aero development time you get for the following season. Now let's look where Ferrari are now. They are in a very, very, very tight fight with McLaren for P3 in the Constructors. But at the end of the day, it's not a title fight. Red Bull and Mercedes are in the trenches right now, fighting more for the Drivers' Championship, aren't they? Obviously, they want Lewis to get his 8th. Red Bull want Max to get his 1st. It's so close with 4 races to go. Surely those two teams are more distracted than any of the others on the grid, right? Surely. Could that hurt their 2022 title aspirations? Maybe. Yes, the battle between Ferrari and McLaren is intense, but are either team going to put more than they need to into this year? Is it in Ferrari's best interest to push for that P3? The Ferrari right now is good enough to get P3, but I think it's close enough between the two teams that the drivers will make the difference. McLaren had the stronger start to the year. I definitely think they had the quicker car at the start of the season, but Ferrari have come through pretty clutch. I mean, both teams have qualified at the top and almost got race wins on merit as well. You look at Ricciardo at Monza, and then you look at Charles at Monaco, polled it and probably would have won that race if they managed to fix his car. But I do think the big thing about finishing P3 to Ferrari and McLaren, it's appropriate to both, is the confidence and the morale boost that will give to the teams. Not just the drivers, not just the mechanics, not just the team principals, but every single individual who works for McLaren or Ferrari will get a big buzz out of it. I think especially Ferrari though, considering they were P6 last year, that was just such a write-off season. To see them come back in this way has been impressive. The psychological boost is an important thing because as much as, yes, you can talk about, oh, it's just the car, it's just machines. Yeah, but it's human beings who build and design those machines. So if they're all buzzing, then that makes your life a lot easier. But yeah, I do think the Ferrari is now slightly ahead of the McLaren. But the biggest reason for that is an upgrade, well, one that will actually be relevant to next season. Charles first in Russia, then Carlos in Turkey have both run the new Ferrari hybrid power unit. It does seem to have given them that slight edge now over McLaren. And unless Mercedes bring a slight upgrade to the McLaren power unit, I'm not sure how they're going to breach that gap. But again, pretty much everything's changing for 2022 apart from the engines. The engines will be coming straight over. We've got an engine freeze from 2022 until probably the end of 2025 now. So Ferrari bringing these upgrades and them actually working is huge for Ferrari into 2022 and onwards, and for Haas and Alfa Romeo. Because look, Ferrari's power deficit has been clear since the technical directive came in towards the end of 2019. I mean, just to put it into kind of numbers, the average pace deficit between Ferrari and Mercedes in 2019 was just 0.15%. In 2020, the average pace deficit in qualifying was 1.5%. That's 10 times the gap. If that's not an engine nerf, I don't know what is. Ferrari. Just be honest. It's fine. You cheated and you got caught. It's not the first time it's happened in Formula One. We've gotten over it. McLaren's upgrades this season have been more aerodynamic and they've worked and they've done a good job. And they've got arguably the best powertrain right now. But Ferrari, if they can upgrade the engine and focus their effort on that, they know that R&D isn't going to go to waste going into next year. Whereas McLaren's aero, well, that's not going to be useful at all after this year. McLaren are just a customer of Mercedes, whereas Ferrari hold all of the cards. If they want to make changes to the engine, they can. As an engine manufacturer, they can make an engine and a chassis that just meshes perfectly together. They have that control. The power unit's looking way more competitive. It should be legal this time. And you know what? I think now's time to give a bit of credit to the man in charge. Matteo Binotto took the helm at Ferrari ahead of the 2019 season, replacing Maurizio Arrivabene. Binotto was a technical lead at Ferrari, so moving into a team principal, that's a very, very different job. There was a lot of skeptics, myself included. In fact, I made a video about Binotto, whether I thought he's the right man for the job or not, over a year ago now. If you want to see my hair longer than it ever has been before, ever, then go and watch that video. I wasn't convinced, but to be fair, he did inherit a team that was on a slippery slope. Even if Arrivabene had stayed in charge, that 2019 engine still would have got nerfed. 2020 still would have been a struggle. And Seb and Charles still would have probably kept running into each other. I don't see how Arrivabene being in charge would have changed those, because when a new team principal comes in, it takes time for them to actually stamp their authority and shape the team in the way they best see fit, right? It's similar to a football manager. You have to give a football manager time to establish, nail down and execute their plan, especially when they're inheriting a team that is on a slippery slope. This season, Ferrari have really impressed me. The step up has been significant. They've had the biggest point swing of any team. Them and Red Bull have got way more points than they did last year. They made a really shrewd hire in Carlos Sainz, which gives them arguably the best driver pairing on the grid. And they've got a car that's got 2 pole positions this year. That's pretty decent when you consider where they were last year. I feel like maybe Binotto is now starting to, his master plan is coming together, okay? And sometimes you've got to hit rock bottom before you can kind of rise up through the ashes. And I hope, because Matteo seems like a really sound bloke, and I want to see Ferrari back at the top. And maybe he was the right man to give the job, because again, the relative change has been very impressive. If they can make another step in the same direction for next season, they could be on top. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. I'll tell you what, going into this season, my expectations have always been high of Charles. I think he's different gravy. But Carlos, I was expecting him to struggle. We saw how much Seb struggled in 2020 in that car. I wasn't expecting that much, but he's done a quality job. He's done such a good job. Credit to Ferrari for giving him a car that he could work with. But Carlos's adaptation, he's taken to that car like a duck to water, has been so impressive. Charles has only solidified his stellar reputation in my mind. 2 pole positions, a P2 and 6 P4s. So consistent. And then Carlos, he's actually got 3 podiums. He's got 2 more than Charles. And it's just mad. They're driving so well. You can tell that Carlos isn't quite as consistent as Charles in his performances. But when he is there, he's very close. I don't think their quality gap on average is, I think it's about 0.1, maybe slightly more than 0.1 of a second. Once Carlos has got that first season under his belt, I feel like next year could be really good. I actually remember at the start of the season, the race put a video out ranking the driver pairings, and they put Ferrari clear, comfortably P1. And I was a bit skeptical because, Max, Perez had such a good year last year. I was like, maybe that's probably the best one, but actually they got it spot on. The Ferrari boys, in terms of consistently getting close to the ceiling potential of their car, I think they've been better than anyone else this year. If Ferrari can really deliver a package next year, if Ferrari can take that 13 years of hurt and channel it in the right direction, if Ferrari did capitalise on their financial head start in 2019, if Ferrari did make an early focus shift onto 2022 this year, if the Ferrari engine innovation will transfer over, if the Ferrari Mattia Binotto master plan comes together, and if the Ferrari driver pairing of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz can deliver as consistently next year as they did this year, I tell you what, I have more confidence and belief in Ferrari than I do in any other team next year, because I just feel like everything's there. Mercedes and Red Bull were distracted, McLaren, customer team, Alpine, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, they kind of talk a big game, but I don't know if I feel it as much as I do with Ferrari. I just feel like everything's there. No more excuses, Ferrari. 2022, this has to be your year. But there we have it. That's what I think. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you think Ferrari are going to be the team to beat next year? Or do you think there is a more compelling argument for someone else to do better than Ferrari? I'll do my best to kind of get back to a good chunk of comments within the first kind of 2-3 hours of the video going live. So my name continues to be Tommo. Thank you so much to Squarespace as well for sponsoring this video and what I do. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.